Now that you know the purpose behind what this assignment is going to entail, we need to go ahead and get started actually reading it. So you're going to be completing noticing charts with both this article and the other one, again, both by Rick Riley. So I just copied for us to look at together the very first step that we're going to do together, which is close reading. We're going to be looking for nonfiction ways of communicating and the audience. I just put it into this same document that we're looking at together, The Fat of the Land. When you open up yours, though, you'll notice that you don't have this in here because yours will be pulled up on another tab with the argument noticings chart. But just to make it a little bit easier for all of us together right now, I just copied and pasted it and put it in here. So let's go ahead and start filling this out together. So this is going to be Fat of the Land by Rick Riley. What kind of, and I'm going to change this to blue because remember, all of my writing is in blue. If it's in blue, it's usually from S. Okay, which kind of nonfiction writing is this? I have to highlight one. So I know that it's nonfiction, but which kind of nonfiction is it? Is it a report? Meaning it's mostly factual, a mostly factual report, mostly free from opinions, or is this going to be an editorial where it's opinions about facts and events? And if you watched my first video, you would know that it's an editorial, which is also called a commentary, where you're expressing an opinion about things that might be happening in our world or perhaps even the sports world, since he was a sports reporter. Okay, so first step, close reading, looking for those nonfiction ways of communicating an audience. As a reminder, we're trying to see how really quality authors communicate so that we can therefore model our communication off of those excellent authors. So that's why we got to do this step. Okay, we have gone over this before, but just to recap, as you read, you want to look for and circle or highlight the ways you notice the author is communicating to you. So that's why it's called a noticings chart. You're noticing how the author communicates to you, and then you notice how those help develop their claim. Remember, you notice how those ways help develop their claim. I know I just said that, but I'm repeating it because that means that it's really important. Did you notice that was a way of communication I just used? Repetition. All right, moving on. By the time you're done reading your article, it should look just like my copy of PJ Squares where I had all those highlighting and notes throughout. Again, we'll do that together when we are going through Fat of the Land, but you'll be responsible for doing that on your own when you read Nothing But Nets. Sometimes, as you've come to find out, the ways are really obvious, like compare and contrast or problem solution or historical background. Other times, these ways are more subtle, like sarcasm or condescending or guilt trip. You also want to consider who their target audience is. Knowing this will help you to understand why they used those ways of communicating. For example, you are 8th graders. I can use sarcasm as a way of communicating with you. However, my 2-year-old, Declan, I cannot use sarcasm when I'm communicating with him. With him, needs to use a different way. Perhaps I could say cause and effect I would use with him. If you don't go to bed right now, Mommy's going to be angry. But you got to change your way of communication based on who your audience is. You guys do this automatically, but you want to oftentimes, because when you're talking to your parents, you communicate differently than you do when you're with your friends. But you need to pay attention to that as well when you're reading to figure out who are they really trying to target, who's their target audience. Let's keep going. Have your highlighter ready so you can highlight the way when you notice the author is using one. Again, your article should look just like my PJ Squares. You notice that's highlighted and copied and pasted twice. Why do you think I would do that? Go ahead and see if you can take a guess. Why did I use repetition in this first section? I hope that you were able to figure out the reason why I highlighted and put this in here twice. The reason why I used repetition was because we are having problems, and I'm noticing that people are not doing this when they read their articles, but it's an extremely important step. So by me using repetition, I'm hoping that you will have noticed it twice and you will actually do it then when you read the article. Funny how those ways of communication creep back in there all the time. All right, I know you're ready to get started. I know to you, perhaps all of this is meaningless. I just want to read the article. I know, but you have to think about things before you start to read. Otherwise, when you're reading, your brain doesn't know what to focus on. It's going to focus on all these different things and perhaps not the most important things that I want you to get out of it. So the preparation is important. Just like when you get dressed and ready for sports, you wear the correct clothing, you have your water bottle, you have your bag. Preparation is important. So now, here we go. Let's read The Fat of the Land. I'm going to get my highlighter ready. I like to highlight in yellow, and then my notes are usually in blue. So let's highlight. The fat of the land. Well, right off the bat, that is kind of shocking. Fat of the land? What does that even mean? It makes me want to keep going. Is your little leaguer so fat his blood type is Cheetos? Oh, wow. That's a whey if I've ever seen one. What would you name that whey? What would you say? To me, this is shock value. Now, I know sometimes you guys don't know the best way to name the communication, but you just try. You try to name it the best way you can. Because remember, with nonfiction especially, there's an unlimited amount of ways of communication that can be used. Let's keep going. Do the other kids wait for your Cub Scout to jump in the pool so they can ride the wave? Oh man, basically saying that kids are fat. Is it difficult for your 6-year-old to play hide and seek anymore? Okay, so there's all these questions. So there's actually three different ways of communication being used here. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I'm actually going to highlight all of this, and I'm going to name these for you. I wonder if you have any idea what you would name these ways. I'm guessing you would probably say repetition. You might say questioning, because we looked at that in PJ Squares, but there's one that you have not learned about yet. How many question marks do you see? 1, 2, 3. There's something called the power of 3. The power of 3 is a way of communication where you give 3 examples, usually right in a row. And if one of the effect of using the power of 3 is because if one example doesn't, you're kind of hoping for one example to stick, right? So if they're using these 3 examples, one of those is going to stick with you maybe more than the other 2. And so by giving 3, you're appealing to more people and relating to more people as they read it. Okay, so the power of 3. I use this one a lot. Now that you've noticed, or now that you learned about it, maybe you could notice when I use the power of 3, but I use it frequently. I see you, Amber, at both ends of the Buick. Ooh. Again, we got some sarcasm here. Could also say he's being pretty harsh. Wouldn't you say? If he's saying that he can see you at both ends of the Buick, yeah, I know Buick is a car, but he can see her at both ends, that means that she's so fat that she's filling up the entire car. To me, this is pretty harsh. But you notice he also used a 1-sentence paragraph. You're not alone. Americans have the fattest kids on earth. Sounds a little like a claim. I'm going to highlight that one in blue because it's a little different than the ways. It kind of sounds like a claim, doesn't it? So I'm going to keep that in blue. Over the last 20 years, the number of overweight children in this country has doubled. Soon, if that trend continues, 1 of every 3 kids will be obese. Well, that's something that I can understand. Wow. Again, this is shock. It's kind of shocking. Wow. I live near an elementary school and see it every day. Chubby little girls are now singing this rope skipping rhyme. Georgia, Texas, North Carolina. I think I'm stiffering. Acute angina. Do you know what acute angina is? If you don't know what that is, copy it. Real quick, I'm going to go out to Google and I'm going to look up what acute angina is. And it says it's a type of chest pain caused by reduced blood flow to the heart. It's a coronary artery disease. described as squeezing, pressure, heaviness, tightness, or pain in your chest. So their rope skipping rhyme has to do with having chest pains. He must be suggesting that it's about from being too overweight. Wow. This is an interesting way of communicating. He's giving a example. This is a little tough to name, but by him including this is important. An example of how little kids don't understand what they're chanting. You could almost label this as I'm struggling with the word. Let me think about this. It's kind of like he's exposing ignorance. Ignorance means they just don't know. So maybe that might be our way. We might name it that. See, even I sometimes struggle to come up with exactly the right words to describe it, but I might come back to that. But right now, by him including this chant, it makes me think that it must be important to him to show that these kids don't really know even what they're saying. Let's keep going. We used to play kick the can every summer night. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm 35 and I have heard of kick the can, but I don't fully understand what that game is. I don't think it's important for me to look that up because I can just guess that it's kicking the can. It sounds like it's active, right? And considering he's talking about overweight kids, I am certain then that it's something that's active. So I don't really need to go and look that up. Maybe I'll look that up later. You probably picked up on, or at least I hope you did, that what he's using here is comparing. Not comparing and contrasting, just comparing. Now kids play sit on your can. Or a game more like, Mother, may I finish off the double stuffed Oreos? Whoa. Generation Y, says U.S. Surgeon General Richard H. Carmona, is turning into Generation XL. What would you name this? Any ideas? I'm going to put an interview because usually in nonfiction, when you have a quote, it certainly is not dialogue. Dialogue is exclusively for fiction. But for nonfiction, when you see a quote, it's typically an interview, or it could be a study or an example from research that has been done, something along those lines. Look at this. Just like Leonard Pitts in PJ Squares, it appears that Rick Riley really likes these one-sentence paragraphs. Again, you'd get in trouble for doing that in school, right? Because it's not academic writing. Academic writing, you need to have longer paragraphs. But for real-world writing, and what you'll see in your regular life, are articles like this, where one-sentence paragraph is okay. Okay, now, this is another way. We only have each other to blame. We're going to pick up right here in the next video, but I want to give you a chance to pause because I've gone over a lot of instruction so far, and I'm sure you probably need a break to let some of that process. Get up, maybe get a snack. But what we're doing is so important that I want you to be really focused as we move into the next video. So go ahead and take a pause here. We'll come meet you right back here in a few minutes.